Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday morning. Joining us on the phones right now, the Attorney General for our great state, Ken Paxton. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
We're doing great. Appreciate you joining us today. There's obviously a lot to get into with the governor announcing yesterday that the state is now moving into phase 2. How is your office? How has this been impacting your office and what you guys are doing as far as talking to businesses and business owners and in different cities about what is the right thing to do and not the right thing to do? I'm guessing your office is pretty busy these days.
You know what? We really are, because under the Disaster Act, we also have the responsibility of giving advice to these county judges, every county judge, the mayors, and then, of course, the governor. So the governor writes these orders, and then we have to try to explain them to both business owners, government officials. So, and these are things, there's no roadmap. These are new things that people have not dealt with before. And so, yes, we are as busy or more busy, I think, than we've ever been.
I want to ask you something that I'm sure you've gotten questions on. I've had just a ton of listeners who have asked me about it. And this is something that is not just unique to Texas. This is a question that's being asked, I think, all around the U.S. Where does a governor or a county judge or elected official get the power to stop a business from operating?
So all of this is driven by the Disaster Act. And the governor's powers operate out of that, and the county judge's powers operate out of that, as to whether each individual act is within that statutory authority. I mean, that's a question that we have to look at every day, and certainly, we've had lawsuits over the authority of the governor to do certain things, and we have to go defend them. The governor's one of our clients, the legislature's one of our clients. And so we end up with lawsuits over that exact issue on all various types of orders and actions by even counties and cities.
Have we seen any lawsuits filed yet over, whether it's counties or the governor's office or any of that? I mean, I expect that if we haven't, that probably will. I mean, we always see that during any type of disaster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had lawsuits. We're dealing with lawsuits over mail-in ballots right now. We're dealing with lawsuits because we feel like, the county, some of these counties, Harris County, Dallas County, are exceeding their authority to rewrite the law as it relates to mail-in ballots. So we're going to be in front of the Supreme Court this week on a mandamus trying to stop them from, basically making up new laws that the legislature never put in place. So it's certainly something that's kept my office busy, because that's not the only issue. There have been, several issues that we've been in litigation over.
Sure. Let's talk about mail-in balloting real quick, since you brought it up. And I want to read two headlines from you. An editorial from the Austin American-Statesman: Paxton's actions hinder efforts to keep us safe. And one from the folks over at Texas Monthly: why does Attorney General Ken Paxton want to make voting a death-defying act? Apparently you can go to a big box store and you'll be okay, but going to a polling location is now a very deadly thing to do in Texas. Well,
I think those two publications might have failed their government civics class, because my job isn't to make the law up. I didn't write the law on this mail-in balloting. My job is to enforce the law, and the law isn't hard to read. It's not hard to understand. I think they could probably read it and understand it if they actually read it. The law allows for mail-in balloting for those who are over 65, for those who are out of town, for those who are in prison who are not felons, and for those who have a disability. Well, a disability isn't defined as a fear of getting some virus or some disease. Otherwise, there would be no rule, because everybody could vote by mail.
Right.
So what they are asking me to do is say, look, you and your better judgment, because you should allow more people to vote, you should ignore what the legislature put in writing and just make up your own law. That's not what we do here. And as much as Texas Monthly and Austin American-Statesman might like that, they need to, if they like it, they need to encourage the legislature to change the law. And if they do, I can tell you, we're going to be dealing with more voter fraud, because the most voter fraud that we deal with in my office relates to mail-in balloting because there's no verification of who these people are.
So if you're over the age of 65, you can do a mail-in vote.
Correct.
And over 65 with coronavirus, that is the highest risk demographic, correct?
Correct. So they already satisfy the mail-in ballot requirement, but it's not because they have a fear. It's because they actually satisfy this over 65, which our elected legislature, put into place.
Yeah. Visiting with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton here on the Chad Hasty Show. I want to talk about some of the I guess rules and executive orders that are out there. One, there seems to be this debate breaking out about whether or not cities can bypass the law passed last year restricting local governments. The Texas Municipal League apparently has been telling folks, or cities and counties, that the governor's emergency declaration order means that they can bypass that rate increase of 3.5% without taking it to voters. The governor came out, I guess it was earlier this week or over the weekend, and said, nope, that's not how I read it, and I don't believe the Texas Attorney General believes that's how it's read. How do you read that? Can cities bypass that law that was passed in the last legislative session?
So that's a great question. We're actually looking at that right now. We haven't actually been officially asked by anybody to review that question. I feel like that's a question we're going to get. So we don't just come out with like advisory opinions on our own. We have to be asked by legislators or certain county officials to answer a question, and then when we get that question, this could be one of them, then we look at the law and we tell people, here's what we think how the courts would interpret this particular statute. So we're looking at that now just because we're anticipating that question coming, but we haven't made any kind of determination yet as to what the answer is. Okay.
And then when we had the hair salon issue in Texas, and you had Shelley Luther there in Dallas County, there was a report from the Dallas Morning News that Texas regulators were dropping cases against other stylists and hair salons across the state of Texas and not going after their licenses because the governor's, reorder overrode the first executive order. Are we going to see more cases like that where, people are not going to be losing their license and the state of Texas is not going to basically enforce some of these punishments that were laid out at the very beginning of an executive order?
Well, let me just start off by saying, we were made aware of this woman that was being put in prison for cutting hair. And I think it may be the first time in American history that anybody's been put in prison for cutting hair voluntarily. So to me, that just seemed like an overreach on the government's part and by this judge particularly. And so we sent a letter to this judge. We had no authority to intervene. We had no legal authority to stop him. But we just sent a letter saying, hey, this is an overreach. This woman should not be in jail. Look, if you want to fine her, fine her. But don't put her in prison. That's way too much for what she's done. And so I'm grateful the governor the next day changed the rules so that, this couldn't happen again. As to whether people are going to have their licenses taken away, I certainly hope, unless they're just acting egregiously, that people don't lose their ability to work. As to whether they get fined, I'm not really commenting on that or speaking of that. That's an individual assessment. That seems more like a reasonable response than taking somebody's ability to work away from them.
Do you think that we're now going to get away from that, though? Some of the I guess you could call them protest openings, since we are moving into phase 2 in Texas?
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope that more and more people get to work. We don't have a cure for this. We don't have a vaccine. People are going to get this virus until we do, and we can't shut down for another year and a half or 2 years or whenever they get it. Even if they get it by December, you can't shut this economy down. There's going to be so much. There's already enough devastation from having to shut it down. I don't want to see more people out of work, more people suffering because they don't have a way to make a living.
Yeah, absolutely. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, appreciate you joining us today. I know you and your office very busy, so we'll let you go, and we do appreciate the time as always.
Hey, thanks, Chad. Have a great day, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That's Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO.